"Why do you call me beautiful, cowboy?" The mail-order bride no one dared to love until him. Clara stood at the edge of the small train station in her hometown, clutching her worn suitcase with trembling hands. The summer sun was high, casting long shadows on the cracked platform, but she barely noticed the warmth. Her mind was crowded with thoughts of what she was leaving behind and what lay ahead. For most of her life, Clara had felt invisible. In her own family, she had been the quiet one, the one whose needs and dreams were often overlooked. She remembered the cold eyes of neighbors, the whispers of relatives, and the harsh words of schoolmates who mocked her for being too shy, too awkward, or simply too different. These experiences had shaped her into someone who trusted few and expected less from the world. Now, at the age of 23, Clara had made a decision that felt both daring and frightening. She was going to leave everything familiar behind and embark on a journey across the ocean. She had applied to be a mail-order bride in America, a choice many might not understand, but for Clara, it represented hope. It was a chance to start over, to be treated as a person with worth, and perhaps to find someone who would see her for who she truly was. The train rumbled into the station and Clara's stomach tightened. She had said quiet goodbyes to her mother, who had hugged her tightly, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Her father had given her a firm nod, his own way of showing approval and concern, though he never voiced much affection. Friends she had tried to make over the years had drifted away, leaving her to navigate life largely alone. Now, as the train hissed and steamed, she felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and a strange, bitter sweetness at leaving her past behind. The journey by train to the port city was long and tiring. Clara watched the landscape change through the dusty window, fields and forests giving way to industrial towns and bustling markets. Each passing town reminded her of everything she had left behind, and everything she might never see again. She tried to distract herself by reading a small journal she had brought, filled with notes, sketches, and thoughts she had never shared with anyone. Writing had always been her way of expressing herself when words failed in conversation. The pages reflected her hopes, fears, and quiet dreams of a life where she was respected and loved. Days later, Clara found herself on a massive ship, its decks crowded with travelers, merchants, and other women like her, bound for America. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, and Clara often found herself staring at the horizon, imagining what life might be like on the other side. Sleep was difficult on the ship, and the constant motion made her stomach churn, but the idea of a fresh start kept her moving forward. She met a few fellow passengers along the way, women who were also hoping for new beginnings, but the conversations were polite and distant. Everyone carried their own fears and secrets, and trust came slowly. When the ship finally docked at a small port town in the western United States, Clara felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. She stepped onto the wooden pier, her feet aching from the journey and breathed in the scent of salt and earth. The town was small but lively, with dusty streets, wooden buildings, and people going about their daily routines. Clara's heart pounded as she looked around. Everything felt unfamiliar, yet there was a sense of possibility in the air, a chance for her life to be different, a chance to finally belong somewhere. Her first meeting with Jack, the man who had agreed to marry her, was awkward and filled with quiet tension. He was a rancher, tall and strong, with hands rough from years of labor and eyes that seemed to look straight through her. He greeted her with a nod and a polite smile, carrying himself with a confidence that made Clara both nervous and curious. She noticed the way he respected her space, never pushing too close or speaking too loudly. There was kindness in his demeanor, though he spoke little at first. Clara found herself uncertain how to respond. She had imagined this meeting countless times in her mind, but reality was always more complex than fantasy. The townspeople watched her arrival with curiosity and quiet judgment. Clara noticed the subtle glances, the whispered words behind hands, and the sideways looks from men and women alike. She had expected some wariness, but the level of scrutiny was intimidating. In her own country, she had been invisible. Here, she was hypervisible, a novelty, someone to be measured and judged. Despite the cold reception, Clara refused to let it shake her. She reminded herself why she had come, to find a life where she could matter, where she could be seen as more than a background figure in other people's stories. Jack guided her to a small wooden house near his ranch. It was modest but well kept, with a warm hearth and a quiet sense of security. Clara explored the room slowly, imagining how she might make this place her own. She unpacked her belongings carefully, arranging the few pieces she had brought with her. Each item held memories of the life she had left behind: a photograph of her family, a worn book of poems, a scarf her mother had knitted. Placing these objects around the house, Clara felt a small but significant connection between her past and her uncertain future. In the following days, Clara began to learn the rhythm of life on the ranch. The work was hard and unrelenting. She rose before sunrise, helping Jack with feeding animals, mending fences, and tending to the fields. Her muscles ached in ways she had never experienced, but each ache was also a reminder that she was capable, that she could endure and adapt. Jack was patient, showing her how to handle tools, how to navigate the wide-open fields, and how to understand the patterns of weather and livestock. Clara admired his skill and resilience, realizing that beneath his rough exterior, he had a gentle, thoughtful nature. Despite the long hours and physical labor, Clara found small moments of peace. She would sit by the edge of the river at dusk, watching the sun dip below the horizon, reflecting on her journey. She thought of the life she had left behind, the loneliness, the doubt, the whispers of people who never truly saw her, and felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had made it this far on her own, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she had taken control of her destiny in a way she never had before. As the days passed, Clara began to notice subtle ways Jack showed care. He would leave fresh bread by her door in the morning, offer gentle advice on handling the animals, and listen when she spoke about her past. There was no grand declaration of love, no exaggerated gestures, just consistent, quiet acts that slowly chipped away at the walls she had built around herself. Clara found herself thinking about him often, wondering what lay behind his steady gaze, and feeling a strange warmth in moments of shared silence. But life in the small town was not without its challenges. Some townspeople remained skeptical of Clara, questioning why she had come and what her intentions were. She endured pointed questions at the market, cold stares from neighbors, and the occasional cruel remark from children who echoed their parents' prejudices. Clara learned to hold her head high, to respond with politeness and dignity, and to let her actions speak louder than words. Each day of resilience strengthened her, teaching her that she could face adversity without losing herself. By the end of the first month, Clara began to feel a cautious sense of belonging. The work, the land, and the people who treated her kindly, especially Jack, began to form the foundation of a new life. She realized that although she had come seeking love and acceptance, she was discovering something even more profound: her own strength, her ability to endure, and her capacity to hope. For the first time in her life, Clara felt that she might not just survive, but that she could truly live. Evenings were her favorite time. After long days of work, she and Jack would sit on the porch, watching the sun fade and listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. Sometimes they spoke, exchanging stories about their pasts. Sometimes they remained silent, comfortable in each other's presence. Clara began to notice small details about Jack: the way he laughed softly when he thought no one was listening, the care he took in everything he did, the gentle way he looked at the animals as if each one mattered. It was in these moments that Clara felt a flicker of something she had longed for her entire life: the feeling of being seen, truly seen, by another human being. By the time the first winter approached, Clara had adapted to her new surroundings in ways she hadn't imagined possible. She had learned to ride a horse, mend fences, and care for the animals with skill and confidence. She had begun to earn a measure of respect from the townspeople, who slowly noticed her determination and resilience. And through it all, Jack remained a steady presence, never pushing, never demanding, simply supporting her as she navigated this new chapter of life. Clara often reflected on the question that had haunted her since childhood. Why had no one ever seen her for who she truly was? Now, here in this small western town, she was beginning to understand that the answer wasn't in the people she had left behind. It was in finding a place, and a person willing to truly notice her. And as she watched Jack work quietly on the fields one crisp morning, she felt the first real stirrings of hope, knowing that this journey, with all its challenges and uncertainties, might just lead her to the life she had always dreamed of. Clara had been on the ranch for several weeks, and while she had begun to adjust to the rhythms of life in the small town, she quickly realized that challenges were everywhere. The work was much harder than she had imagined. Feeding the livestock at dawn, mending broken fences, and helping Jack with the endless maintenance of the ranch tested her strength and patience. Her muscles ached in ways she had never experienced, and some mornings she felt like she could not move from the soreness. But each day she endured reminded her that she was capable, that she could face hardship and survive it. She was determined not to let her inexperience or the townspeople's judgment shake her resolve. The townspeople were slow to accept Clara. She noticed the subtle glances, the whispered comments behind her back, and the sideways looks from those who clearly thought she didn't belong. Children would stare, pointing and asking awkward questions, while adults would treat her politely on the surface but clearly kept their distance. Some even went out of their way to warn Jack that marrying a mail-order bride could bring trouble. Clara felt the weight of their suspicion and judgment heavily, but she tried to remain polite and respectful, knowing that anger or defensiveness would only make things worse. Despite her best efforts, she sometimes felt the old familiar ache of being invisible, or worse, being unwelcome, in a world she was just beginning to call home. Jack noticed how tense Clara sometimes became around others. He had seen women arrive at the ranch before, but something about Clara was different. She was quiet, careful, and deeply aware of every glance and whisper around her. Jack was patient, never rushing her or expecting her to adapt instantly. He often gave her space when she needed it, but quietly offered guidance whenever she faltered. His patience and consistent presence were slowly beginning to build trust in Clara's heart, though she still hesitated to show it openly. The hardest challenge for Clara was not the physical labor, it was learning to trust. Her past had taught her to protect herself by expecting disappointment, and every moment of kindness felt tinged with caution. When Jack helped her with the animals or showed her how to handle farm tools, she often suspected that he might grow impatient with her mistakes or find her inadequate. Yet, Jack never once expressed frustration or impatience. Instead, he offered gentle corrections, quiet praise, and the occasional joke to lighten the mood. Clara found herself appreciating his reliability, though she was careful not to show it too openly. One afternoon, a minor accident occurred on the ranch. While helping Jack move hay bales, Clara slipped and injured her ankle. Jack immediately rushed to her side, concern flashing in his eyes. He helped her to the porch and carefully examined the injury. Clara tried to downplay it, insisting that it was nothing serious, but Jack was not easily convinced. He cleaned the scrape, wrapped it carefully, and made sure she rested. In that moment, Clara felt something unfamiliar, a sense of being cared for in a way that was genuine, steady, and unhurried. It was not the fleeting sympathy she had experienced in her past. It was a thoughtful, consistent attention that made her feel safe. Even with moments of kindness, misunderstandings arose. One morning, while Clara was collecting eggs from the chicken coop, she overheard a conversation between two townswomen. They were questioning why Jack had married a mail-order bride, suggesting that Clara was nothing more than a stranger with unclear intentions. Clara felt a sting of anger and sadness. She wondered if Jack truly saw her for who she was, or if he had simply settled for a companion out of convenience. That night she found herself sitting alone on the porch, watching the stars, wrestling with her fears. She thought of the life she had left behind, the loneliness she had endured, and the possibility that her past might continue to shadow her even here. Jack noticed her quiet mood but did not push her to speak. He knew that Clara needed time to process her feelings and that any attempt to force her to talk would only push her further away. Instead, he simply sat near her, offering his presence as a quiet reassurance. It was in these moments of unspoken support that Clara began to understand that Jack's affection was not conditional or performative. It was genuine, patient, and grounded in respect. She began to feel a subtle shift in her heart, a tentative hope that maybe, for the first time, someone could truly value her. However, trust and understanding did not come easily. Clara sometimes misread Jack's quietness as disinterest or detachment. When he went out early to check on the cattle or spent long hours in the fields, she would feel a pang of loneliness, wondering if she had imagined the small gestures of kindness he had shown. She found herself questioning whether love could really exist for someone like her, someone who had been overlooked and misunderstood for so long. These doubts sometimes made her retreat emotionally, keeping her distance from Jack even as he tried to draw her closer with patience and care. The town itself presented additional challenges. Some neighbors were friendly, but others were skeptical, even hostile. Clara struggled to navigate the complex social dynamics, learning which interactions could be ignored and which required diplomacy. She discovered that small acts of kindness, such as helping a neighbor carry firewood or sharing baked bread, slowly earned respect. Yet even as she worked to integrate herself, she remained aware that prejudice and misunderstanding could flare up at any moment. Every interaction was a reminder that belonging had to be earned, not given. One day, a significant misunderstanding arose. A local gossip, noticing Clara speaking to a young man about some farm supplies, exaggerated the encounter and spread rumors that Clara had intentions other than marrying Jack. Clara heard about it from a passerby and felt her heart sink. She had worked so hard to show her sincerity and commitment, yet this careless rumor threatened to undo her efforts. Jack confronted the gossip calmly, dismissing the claims and defending Clara's honor without any anger or confrontation. Clara was struck by his unwavering loyalty, realizing that he truly saw her for who she was, even when others did not. This moment became a turning point, strengthening her respect and trust in him. Despite these difficulties, there were moments of joy and small victories. Clara began to master the daily tasks of ranch life, from milking cows to tending the garden. Each success, no matter how small, boosted her confidence and reminded her that she was capable of growth. Jack celebrated her accomplishments quietly, offering a nod, a smile, or a few kind words, which meant more to Clara than any grand gesture. She began to feel a sense of purpose, realizing that her contributions were valued and that she could be an integral part of this new life. Over time, Clara also started noticing subtle ways Jack expressed his affection. He would leave small gifts, a piece of fruit, a fresh loaf of bread, or a simple note of encouragement when he knew she had a difficult day. He never pressured her or demanded anything in return. Clara began to recognize that love could exist quietly, in acts of consistency, respect, and consideration. This realization was both comforting and terrifying, as it challenged the protective walls she had built around herself. As weeks turned into months, Clara began to feel a tentative sense of belonging. She was still cautious, still aware of the potential for rejection and misunderstanding, but she also began to allow herself to hope. The land, the ranch, and the people who treated her kindly became the foundation of her new life. She discovered a rhythm in her days, the early mornings, the hard work, the quiet evenings on the porch with Jack, that brought a sense of stability and peace she had never experienced before. Yet, life was not without tension. Clara's emotional walls sometimes caused friction with Jack, as he could not always understand her fears and insecurities. There were moments when she misinterpreted his intentions or withdrew without explanation. Jack, in turn, sometimes felt frustration, not at her, but at his inability to reach her completely. These challenges were not signs of failure. They were part of the delicate process of building trust and connection. Slowly, they learned to navigate these misunderstandings, learning patience, communication, and empathy. By the end of this period, Clara had made significant personal progress. She had faced the harsh realities of ranch life, endured the skepticism of the town, and confronted her own fears and doubts. She had begun to recognize her own strength, resilience, and capacity to adapt. And most importantly, she had started to see the depth of Jack's character, the patience, kindness, and steady affection that made her begin to believe in the possibility of love. Clara often reflected on her journey, realizing that the challenges she faced were shaping her into someone stronger, more confident, and more capable of trusting others. The work was hard, the town was sometimes harsh, and her emotional scars ran deep, but each day brought small victories, small connections, and a growing sense of hope. She was learning that love was not always dramatic or instant. It could be quiet, steady, and built over time, through patience, respect, and shared experience. Even as she faced misunderstanding and prejudice, Clara began to feel a subtle transformation. She was no longer the timid, overlooked girl she had once been. She was learning to navigate the world with quiet confidence, to assert herself when necessary, and to accept the kindness of those who truly valued her. And with Jack by her side, offering steady support without demanding or pressuring, Clara began to allow herself to imagine a future she had never dared to dream of before. Clara had been living on the ranch for several months now, and although she had grown accustomed to the hard work and the isolation of the town, life was far from easy. The physical labor had become more manageable. She could ride the horses, mend fences, and care for the animals with increasing confidence, but the emotional challenges remained. She still carried the weight of her past, the loneliness, and the constant fear that she might not belong. Jack had been a steady presence through it all, patient and kind, but Clara often felt unsure whether she could truly trust anyone, even him. One chilly morning, the sky was gray with heavy clouds that threatened rain. Clara woke early, feeling a sense of unease she couldn't explain. She put on her coat, prepared breakfast for the animals, and went to check on the cattle. Jack had gone to the far fields to inspect the fences, leaving Clara alone with the herd. As she walked among the cows, a sudden crack of thunder echoed across the valley. The storm came quickly, a fierce wind whipping through the fields, turning the usually calm morning into chaos. Clara's heart raced. She knew that the animals would be frightened, and without Jack there, it was up to her to manage them. Panic surged in Clara's chest as she tried to guide the cattle into a secure pen. Some of the animals resisted, running toward the open field, and Clara felt a rising fear. She stumbled, her foot caught in the uneven ground, and for a moment she froze. This was the first time she truly felt the raw power of the land, the unpredictable force of nature, and her own vulnerability. She thought of everything she had left behind, the life she had risked coming here, and wondered if she had made a mistake. She wanted to run, to hide, but the animals depended on her. She took a deep breath and forced herself to move, her hands shaking but determined. Hours seemed to pass as Clara struggled against the storm. She shouted to calm the animals, guided them toward the safety of the barn, and did her best to secure the gates. By the time Jack returned, soaked to the bone but calm and focused, Clara was exhausted. He quickly assessed the situation, helping her tie down the last of the loose equipment and leading the remaining frightened animals to shelter. Throughout it all, he never scolded her or made her feel inadequate. Instead, he offered steady guidance and encouragement, his calm presence giving her a sense of control she had almost lost. After the storm passed, they stood together on the porch, watching the fields glisten under the rain-soaked sun. Clara's heart was still racing, but she felt a strange sense of pride. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and she had survived. She glanced at Jack, whose hair was plastered to his forehead and whose boots were caked with mud, and realized for the first time how deeply she respected him. He had risked his own safety without hesitation, and he had never questioned her efforts, even when she struggled. Clara felt a surge of gratitude and admiration, emotions that went beyond simple appreciation. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Jack spoke in a quiet voice that made Clara's heart flutter. "You handled yourself well today," he said, not as praise for politeness, but as acknowledgement of her courage and determination. Clara looked down, unsure how to respond. She had been so used to being overlooked or underestimated that genuine recognition felt almost foreign. Jack continued, "I've seen you grow stronger, Clara, more than I can say in words. And I want you to know that I respect you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are." She had spent so many years hiding, doubting herself, and expecting disappointment, that the idea of being valued, respected, and genuinely cared for was almost overwhelming. She looked up at Jack, meeting his steady gaze, and felt a connection she had never experienced before, a bond built on trust, shared hardship, and quiet understanding. In the following days, Clara's confidence grew. She approached her work with renewed determination, no longer just performing tasks because she had to, but because she wanted to contribute and prove her own capability. She started taking initiative, suggesting improvements in how the ranch was managed, and even experimenting with planting a small vegetable garden near the barn. Jack noticed, of course, and while he offered guidance, he allowed her to make decisions and take responsibility. This freedom was empowering for Clara, and she began to feel more like a partner than an outsider. Despite these positive changes, challenges still arose. The town remained wary of her, and not all neighbors were quick to accept her presence. Some still whispered about her past, while others questioned her intentions and her place on the ranch. Clara sometimes felt the sting of these remarks deeply, and she found herself retreating into moments of solitude, worried that she might never fully belong. But Jack's unwavering support became her anchor. When she felt uncertain or hurt, he would quietly reassure her, not with grand speeches but with small, consistent acts of kindness. A cup of tea waiting on the porch, a hand on her shoulder during moments of doubt, a gentle question about her day. Each gesture reminded Clara that she was not alone. One afternoon, an unexpected opportunity arose for Clara to prove herself even further. A neighboring ranch experienced a sudden problem. A herd of cattle had broken through a fence and wandered into a dangerous area near the river. Jack was away on an errand, and the neighboring ranch owner asked Clara if she could help. At first, she hesitated, aware that she was still learning the ropes. But the memory of the storm, her own strength, and the encouragement Jack had given her filled her with determination. She agreed, and with careful planning, she managed to guide the stray cattle back to safety, earning praise not just from the neighboring rancher but also from several skeptical townspeople who had witnessed her efforts. This moment was transformative for Clara. She realized that her past fears, doubts, and insecurities did not have to define her. She had the ability to act decisively, to help others, and to gain the respect she had always longed for. More importantly, she saw that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to face it. Clara began to understand that she had the power to shape her own life, and that Jack's faith in her was not misplaced. As Clara and Jack continued to work side by side on the ranch, their relationship deepened in subtle, meaningful ways. They learned each other's habits, preferences, and rhythms. Clara noticed how Jack's eyes softened when he watched her succeed, and Jack noticed how Clara's confidence and resilience grew with each challenge she faced. They shared quiet conversations about their pasts, their hopes, and their dreams. Clara spoke cautiously at first, revealing fragments of her childhood, her fears, and her long-held desire for acceptance. Jack listened without judgment, offering understanding and empathy rather than advice or criticism. Over time, Clara began to allow herself to feel a sense of belonging that had always eluded her. She discovered that love was not always dramatic or immediate. It could be quiet, patient, and built gradually through shared experiences, mutual respect, and consistent support. She realized that Jack's love was not about grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It was about the everyday acts that showed care, consideration, and trust. And in return, Clara found herself caring for him deeply, not out of obligation but out of genuine affection and admiration. Yet, the journey was not without tension. Clara sometimes misread Jack's silence or thought that he was indifferent when he retreated to the fields for long hours. She would feel a pang of insecurity, questioning whether he truly cared or whether she was imagining the connection they shared. Jack, for his part, sometimes felt frustrated at her withdrawal, wishing he could bridge the gap between her fears and the love he offered. These moments of misunderstanding were temporary, but they reminded Clara that trust and connection required patience, communication, and vulnerability. One evening, after a long day tending to the animals, Clara and Jack sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the hills. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the air carried the faint scent of wildflowers and freshly turned soil. Clara felt a deep sense of peace, a rare feeling she had never experienced in her past. She turned to Jack, her voice quiet but steady. "Thank you for believing in me," she said, "even when I didn't believe in myself." "I've always seen you, Clara," he said softly. "Not just what you do, but who you are, and I always will." In that moment, Clara felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, relief, and a budding sense of love. She realized that she could trust him, that he truly valued her for herself, and that together they could face whatever challenges life might bring. From that day forward, Clara approached life on the ranch with renewed confidence and purpose. She embraced the work, the land, and the community with a sense of ownership and pride. She allowed herself to feel hope, to believe in love, and to recognize her own worth. And with Jack by her side, patient, understanding, and steadfast, she discovered that true partnership was built not on grand gestures, but on trust, respect, and shared experience. By the end of this turning point in her life, Clara had transformed. She was no longer the timid, unsure young woman who had arrived months before. She had faced danger, adversity, and emotional doubt, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace the future. The bond she shared with Jack had grown into something profound, an unspoken understanding, a quiet love, and a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared experience. Clara began to see that the life she had longed for, one of belonging, love, and purpose, was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming her reality. The months that followed the storm marked a new chapter for Clara and Jack. Life on the ranch had settled into a rhythm, but it was no longer just about work and survival. It was about growth, trust, and shared dreams. Clara had grown stronger, more confident, and more at ease in her new home. She moved through her days with a sense of purpose, tending the animals, managing the gardens, and helping Jack with the endless chores that ranch life demanded. Every task she performed reminded her of how far she had come, from the timid, uncertain girl who had first arrived to the capable, determined woman who now embraced her life fully. The townspeople began to notice the changes in Clara as well. At first, some remained skeptical, their whispers still sharp with judgment. But gradually, her hard work, reliability, and gentle kindness began to shift perceptions. Neighbors who had once been wary approached her with genuine smiles, asking for her advice or offering assistance. They saw the courage and dedication she had shown during the storm, her willingness to help others, and the quiet dignity with which she conducted herself. Slowly, Clara began to earn a place not just in Jack's life, but in the community as a whole. She felt a sense of belonging she had never imagined possible, a feeling that she could finally call this town her home. Jack watched her transformation with quiet pride. He had seen her strength from the beginning, but now it was fully visible in the way she moved through the world with confidence and grace. He admired how she had faced every challenge with determination, how she had earned the respect of the townspeople, and how she had opened her heart to the possibility of love. Jack's own feelings deepened as he observed Clara's growth, not because of what she did, but because of the person she had become. He began to understand that their partnership was more than just survival on the ranch. It was about mutual respect, shared effort, and love built on trust. One day, as they worked together to repair a section of fencing along the far pasture, Clara paused to take a breath. The sun was warm on her face, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers from the hills. She looked at Jack, who was focused on hammering posts into the ground, and felt a wave of gratitude. "I never thought I could feel this at home," she said quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of wonder and relief. Jack looked up and smiled, a soft, knowing expression in his eyes. "You belong here, Clara. You always have," he replied. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of sincerity, and Clara felt her heart swell with emotion. Over time, Clara and Jack grew even closer, their bond strengthened by the challenges they had faced together. They shared quiet moments in the evenings, sitting on the porch as the sun set over the rolling fields. Sometimes they spoke of their pasts, sharing memories of childhood, family, and the paths that had led them here. Other times, they simply sat in comfortable silence, letting the sounds of the ranch and the gentle rhythm of their lives speak for them. Clara realized that love did not always need words. It could be felt in steady presence, quiet understanding, and the simple act of being there for each other. As their relationship deepened, Clara found herself thinking less about the past and more about the future. She began to dream of what their life could be together, not just surviving on the ranch, but thriving, building a home, and creating a life filled with hope and happiness. She imagined planting more gardens, raising animals, and perhaps one day welcoming children into the home they were creating. These thoughts no longer brought fear or doubt. Instead, they filled her with excitement and determination. She realized that she had the power to shape her destiny and that Jack would be there, supporting her every step of the way. Despite their growing happiness, life was not without occasional challenges. Weather could still turn harsh, animals could fall ill, and the town's gossip sometimes resurfaced. But Clara and Jack faced these difficulties together, as partners, leaning on one another for strength and support. Each obstacle became an opportunity to deepen their bond, to trust each other more fully, and to demonstrate their resilience. Clara learned that love was not about avoiding hardship, but about facing it together with patience, courage, and unwavering commitment. The turning point in Clara's acceptance within the town came unexpectedly. One summer, a nearby farm experienced a severe drought, leaving crops wilting and livestock struggling. Clara, seeing an opportunity to help, organized a small effort to bring water and supplies to the affected farm. She enlisted the help of Jack, as well as a few townspeople who had begun to trust and respect her. Together, they worked tirelessly, carrying water, repairing fences, and providing support to the struggling neighbors. By the end of the week, Clara had not only helped save the farm but had also earned the admiration and gratitude of the entire community. For the first time, she felt fully recognized, not as an outsider or a novelty, but as a valued member of the town, someone who had proven her worth through action, courage, and kindness. Jack watched her during this effort, silently proud of her leadership and determination. He had always believed in her, but seeing the town finally recognize her contributions brought him a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. He realized that Clara had not only found a place in his life, but had also carved out her own place in the world, a place where she was respected, valued, and truly seen. As autumn arrived, the ranch took on a golden hue, the fields rich with the colors of the season. Clara and Jack spent their days harvesting crops, preparing the animals for the colder months, and enjoying the simple pleasures of ranch life. Clara reflected on her journey, remembering the uncertain girl who had first arrived at the port town, unsure of what awaited her. She had faced fear, loneliness, and prejudice, yet she had persevered. She had learned to trust, to work hard, and to love cautiously but deeply. And in doing so, she had found not only a partner in Jack, but a home and a community that accepted her for who she truly was. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Clara and Jack sat on the porch, sharing a quiet meal. Clara turned to him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and love. "I never thought I could feel this happy," she said softly. Jack reached over, taking her hand in his. "You deserve it, Clara. You've worked for it and you've earned it." "And I'm honored to be part of it with you," he replied. In that moment, Clara felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had never known. She realized that the journey had been difficult not because it was impossible, but because it had shaped her into the person she was meant to become. As winter approached, the ranch settled into a quiet, comforting rhythm. Snow dusted the fields and the animals huddled together for warmth. Clara and Jack spent long evenings by the fire, talking, laughing, and planning for the future. They spoke of dreams, expanding the ranch, planting new gardens, perhaps even raising children one day. These conversations were filled with hope, trust, and a deep understanding of each other's hearts. Clara no longer feared the unknown. She embraced it, knowing that she and Jack would face it together. The townspeople, too, had come to accept Clara fully. Her courage, resilience, and kindness had won over even the most skeptical neighbors. Children no longer stared with curiosity or suspicion. They greeted her warmly, recognizing her as a figure of strength and compassion. Adults sought her advice, trusted her judgment, and treated her as a friend and equal. Clara realized that she had achieved something far greater than mere survival. She had found a place where she truly belonged, a place where her worth was recognized and valued. Through all of this, Clara's love for Jack grew steadily and deeply. She admired his strength, his patience, and his unwavering support. She appreciated the quiet ways he showed his affection, the small gestures, the consistent presence, the way he listened without judgment. She realized that love was not about grand declarations or dramatic displays, but about the steady, enduring connection that they shared. And Jack, in turn, cherished Clara's courage, intelligence, and determination. He saw in her a partner, an equal, and a source of inspiration. By the time spring returned to the valley, Clara and Jack's life on the ranch had blossomed into something truly beautiful. The land thrived under their care, the animals were healthy and well managed, and the town recognized Clara as a valued member of the community. Together, they had built not only a home, but a life filled with purpose, love, and mutual respect. Clara often reflected on her journey, the doubts, the fears, the challenges, and realized that every step had been necessary to bring her to this moment. On a warm spring morning, as the sun rose over the hills and the fields were alive with the sounds of birds and livestock, Clara stood beside Jack on the porch of their home. She looked out at the land, feeling a sense of gratitude and accomplishment. "We've come so far," she said quietly. Jack nodded, taking her hand in his. "And we'll go even further," he replied. "Together," Clara smiled, a feeling of completeness washing over her. She no longer questioned why anyone would see her as beautiful. She knew it now, not because of fleeting praise or superficial admiration, but because she had found someone who truly saw her heart, her strength, and her soul. Clara had arrived as a mail-order bride seeking a new life, unsure of what awaited her. She had faced fear, prejudice, and loneliness, yet she had persevered. Through hard work, courage, and the quiet, unwavering love of Jack, she had found not only a partner but a home, a community, and a sense of belonging she had never imagined. Her journey had transformed her, teaching her the value of resilience, trust, and love built on mutual respect. In the end, Clara realized that the beauty of life was not in the absence of struggle, but in the courage to face it and the joy of finding someone who truly walks beside you through it all. And so, on that bright spring morning, Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known. She was home. She was loved. And for the first time in her life, she knew she truly belonged.